Happy hump day, everyone. This is Vincent. I just want to let you know that, as always, I'm very blessed to have this moment with everyone here. I feel like this is something that needs to be done. It comes from my heart, it comes from my soul. And as always, I like to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge of allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America and to the republic for which the flag stands, one nation under Almighty God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I changed this a little bit because, truth be told, I think that that's how it should have been written, in my opinion, of course. And some of the wonderful guests I've had on that are political leaders or activists, so on and so forth, they kind of agree that we should be pledging our allegiance to our founding fathers' document, the Constitution. Without further ado, as always, I like to offer, of course, one of my favorite segments, of course, is my quote for the day. And so here it goes from one of my favorite of all times. Being honest may not get you many friends, but it will always get you the right ones. John Lennon. Again, being honest may not get you many friends, but it will always get you the right ones. You know, that's the whole thing these days. When you are honest with people about your politics, you can offend people without even realizing it. You don't want to. You don't want to make enemies. No one wants to. But that's when you really understand whether or not they have what's called common sense. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you. That's when you realize whether or not they have common sense. Common sense incorporates something called respect and critical thinking. And you have to have respect and be able to critically think about situations. This program is going to make you really think quite a bit. And I'm hoping you're going to grab, pick up something on it. I mean, I've always said, if you do not learn something new, at least one thing new a day, you have not lived your life fully. Today, jokingly, I said to a friend of mine, if you don't learn something new 6 days in a row, the seventh day might be the day to rest. You can take that the way you want. I'm not saying to rest forever, but you can take it the way you want. It's the start of a new week, maybe. But I'm going to open up with, and I don't normally do this. Every now and then I do get a nugget. And about 2 weeks ago, the guest I have coming on, by the way, his name is Colin Sorhus, Dr. Colin Sorhus. He's going to be coming on in about probably 2 minutes or 3 minutes when I get done reading this. But I received this nugget and I thought to myself, how fitting when it comes to looking at where our economics are today, how it was actually incorporated through time from the beginning of our country. So from the Liberty Thought of the Week by Paul Hamby. Paul Hamby is an incredible man. If you go and look up Liberty Thought of the Week.com, you can get this man's writings. He's phenomenal. He really is. So without further, continuing on here, since the beginning of our country, there has been a debate about where the most powerful should be held, where the most power should be held. Thomas Jefferson believed individual states should retain the most power and the federal government should be severely limited. Alexander Hamilton was one of the loudest proponents for a strong central government and a national bank. He lost that battle in our founding times. With Thomas Jefferson as George Jefferson's Secretary of State and Alexander Hamilton as Treasury Secretary, the two competing visions for America developed supporters of Hamilton's vision of a strong central government, many of whom were Northwest or Northern businessmen, bankers, and merchants who leaned towards England when it came to foreign affairs, would become known as the Federalists. Jefferson, on the other hand, favored limited federal government and keeping power in state and local hands. His supporters tended to be small farmers, artisans, and southern planters who traded with the French and were sympathetic to France. History.com. But then 1913 changed everything. The 17th Amendment, ratified in April 1913, transferred power from state legislatures to Congress. The Federal Reserve Act, passed in December 1913, transferred the power to print and lend money from the U.S. Treasury to the private central bank known as the Federal Reserve. The ability for the federal government to grow required a new funding source. On February 3rd, 1913, Congress ratified the 16th Amendment, authorizing an income tax. Later that year, Congress passed the income tax. To start, it was just 1% for the Americans making $3,000 per year. $3,000 in 1913 is equal to $91,163.64 in 2023 dollars. The top rate was 7%. Along came World War I, and the top rate jumped to 67% to help pay for the war. At the beginning of the Great Depression, tax rates were 1.5% for most Americans and 25% for those earning over $100,000. That would be $1931, or about $2 million in 2023 dollars. On November the 13th in 1979, Ronald Reagan announced his candidacy for President of the United States. At that time, the federal income tax rate for most Americans was 14 to 21%, and the highest rates were 70% for those earning over $170,000 a year, and that was in 1979. Mr. Reagan argued the government is taking too much money that is inhibiting investments that create jobs. JFK had made the same argument, but history proved both were to be correct. Lower rates stimulated the economy. Today, most Americans pay 12 to 24%, with the highest rate being 37% for those earning over $317,000, and that would be in the year 2021. Ronald Reagan's closing argument of his 1980 campaign was, "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" The answer was no for almost everyone in the private sector. Are you better off today with a strong federal government than you would be if 1913 had not been such a bad year for liberty? I would argue that you would be much better off without Amendments 16 and 17 and no Federal Reserve. Virtually everything the federal government has taken control of is worse off. Just look at our national debt and the public education system. Since 1913, the US dollar has lost 95% of its value due to inflation, a direct result of the policies of the US government and the Federal Reserve. I hope you'll possibly go back in the future just to listen to this one more time and understand that we're in such a bad way that I'm hoping personally, if I'm elected governor, if I'm even vetted and accomplished getting through to the Constitutional Party to represent, I'm hoping to utilize this gentleman in particular. He's got something going, and I think it would be a good state of affairs for our state. And I think it would be a good way to really get back down to the basics of taxation. I want to introduce Colin Sorhus, Dr. Colin Sorhus. How are you doing, Colin?
Well, I'm doing fine.
What did you think about what I just read, sir?
Wow, an introduction to what I'm going to talk about, because that's exactly the issue that we have it at hand, and it's something that we have to solve, or we will find our country folding up.
Folks, I want to also tell you, Colin and I have spoken only on 2 occasions, technically face to face. We've had a few conversations, so I would say that we've got to probably, Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 8 hours together, correct?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'd say about 8 hours. Believe it or not, Colin, a lot of time the guests that come on, we only have maybe 30 to 45 minutes, really seriously. And it's like we just walk into a bar and we just start having that conversation. But in the case here, folks, also, Colin did not know what I was going to read. And I had found this about 2 weeks ago. Again, Liberty Thought of the Week by Paul Hamby. Wonderful piece. So, Colin, you and I have talked about, and you know that this is not one of my strong points, strong suits, strong forts. Some people say forte. Finances, I mean, personal finances, I'm fine with, but it's the understanding of the state's finances. So you had sent me a document. It's called the State of Missouri Gross Receipts Tax. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually implemented this about 25 years ago, if I remember correctly, in Oregon. What happened there?
Oh, this is what happened. There's a good story here. We wrote that. I did with 2 other colleagues. One was Bruce Holliday, and the other one was Dale Crabtree. Dale Crabtree was a retired federal administrative law judge, and probably the brightest guy that I ever ran across. He had a mind like a steel trap. And so we wrote the gross receipts tax for Oregon, and it's essentially the same one that we're going to go through today. The PERS, which was the Public Employees Retirement System, did not take kindly to it and took us to the Supreme Court, and they kept delaying and delaying and delaying until the session ended and the time exhausted that the courts actually heard it. After the session was closed, the head of the court invited Bruce and Dale into his office, into his chambers, and he said, "I read through this document." He says, "There is nothing legally wrong in this," and he said, "This is the most brilliant work that I've seen done in this area." And he turned to Bruce and he said, "Surely you didn't write this." And Bruce said, "I didn't. Dale wrote it." And of course, we had a little bits of input, but he was the major pusher. Dale lived to be 100 years old. And the justice said, "Dale Crabtree, I went to school with him. Is he here?" And Bruce said, "Yes, he's right here." He went over there and gave him the biggest hug, and he said, "I knew this was a way above the ordinary mind to put together." And so I'm hoping that I can do a good job in relaying that brilliant mind to you tonight. So anyways, what happened was the Oregon legislature let it sit, and it never got on the ballot because the court case was delayed until after the ballot. The state of Oregon implemented part of it, and they implemented was the the gross receipts part of it, which was supposed to be a replacement tax for all other taxes in the state. They kept all the other taxes, and and in addition to that, they made the gross receipts tax an add-on tax. Now, just so you understand here a little bit, the gross receipts tax was paid by sellers only, included in the price of whatever was sold. So the ordinary public in Oregon didn't even know there was a gross receipts tax, and that they were paying it in the price of whatever they bought. However, this was the outcome, and I think that this is important to know. The gross receipts tax is a tax on all goods and services sold in the state, included in the price whatever sold, but is so powerful that it requires just a small percentage, because it touches it touches every transaction, okay, whether it's goods or services. And I saw this yesterday I saw this, and I thought, I have to read this. This is from Oregon, the state of Oregon, and it's as a result of the implementation of the gross receipts tax at the state level. This is what happened. Maybe most dramatic, it is so large that taxpayers can expect to be refunded early nearly 45% of all income taxes they paid to the state of Oregon last year.
Wow.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
So the theory and the genius behind this is, we'll go into that, I guess, as we go through here. But the genius behind this is that it's a low rate, but it touches every transaction exactly the same amount. And so you don't have people being able to adjust the rate or lobby for different rates or change the rate. And I'll get into the details of this in a second. However, I just wanted to, you got me off on Oregon, but I wanted to say that it's Christmas time, and probably not the best time to talk about taxes. But when is it ever? So I promised to make it worth your while to find out about this revolutionary tax system. Okay. And I've in my notes here, I've talked about making this understandable to the common man, and the common man, who, by the way, is picking up the check for everything that goes on in the government. And he is the one that has little or no voice. So that's one of the things that that is specifically addressed in the GRT. We call it the GRT, gross receipts tax. It gives, again, the people a voice in where their money is spent and how it's spent. And so, go ahead.
I was going to say, basically, the tax background that you've written up, and I'm going to read this out real quick. The
Okay.
tax background: taxes are necessary to support services provided by the government, to preserve a tranquil environment for the citizens to enjoy their personal lawful pursuit of happiness. And these services include a court system for redress, a police force to uphold the law, and an infrastructure to enhance business and personal lives, etc. Theoretically, a good tax must, number one, be fair. Number two, interact with the marketplace as little as possible. Number three, raise enough revenue to support the government. And four, be collected as efficiently as possible. Easy to pay, hard to avoid paying. What exactly, I mean, can you break that down a little bit more?
Sure. We all know that we need government services. And so there has to be a way to tax them, the people who are the beneficiaries of those services. But theoretically, a good tax, a tax that is not abused by those providing the services, has to be fair. And fair always is in the eye of the beholder. What we suggested is for fair is that everyone who accesses government services or benefits will pay the same amount. Okay, there's not a separate price for rich people or poor people. That's called progressive taxes. And as you become more and more successful, your tax burden becomes progressively worse. Interacting with the marketplace as little as possible. And this is to stop the government from doing social engineering with the products. For instance, I'll give you an example of this. Taxes on alcohol are much, much higher than any other food or beverage. And the reason for it is because somebody somewhere said, this is bad for the people, and so we have to discourage people from buying alcohol, and the way to do that is to tax them. This violates, at least in my mind, something quite important about freedom. And the freedom is this: people should have the ability to choose for themselves and be responsible for their own consequences. Different than having Big Brother or the government decide what's good and not good for you. And as you can see by some of the things that the government has come up with lately, you're thinking, I don't know if that's that good for me. And they come up with some crazy ideas. So the idea here is that we're not supposed to use the tax system to interfere with the normal operations of the marketplace. Okay, so if the tax for alcohol is 200%, right, it will go down dramatically if the gross receipts tax is used. And people need to be taking responsibility for their own actions. How can you be held responsible for something that you don't have any choice as to whether you do or not? It has to raise enough money to support the government. You can't have the government go broke. Otherwise, it can't provide the services that we need. And the fourth one is that you want to be able to collect the taxes as efficiently as possible so that you don't waste precious taxes on collecting them. And you'll see that these four principles that we incorporated pretty well into the gross receipts tax, and I hope that will come out as we talk a little bit more about it.
Well, you did line out the different kinds of taxes. There are four kinds of taxes. So can I read them off?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the first one would be taxes on what we earn or our income taxes. The second one is taxes on what we own, property tax, personal property tax, and estate tax. The third would be the silent tax or inflation deflation, where the value of your money fluctuates while sitting in your pocket. And fourth, taxes on what we buy, your sales tax, your gross receipt tax, value tax added, etc. So can you give us a breakdown and just let people know particularly the kinds of these taxes again, taxes on what we earn, income taxes?
Okay, the first three taxes are asset-based taxes, and failure to pay property taxes, for example, or personal property taxes, will result in a lien being placed on your property, on the property you own, or in the case of income tax, a criminal charge will be brought against you. So those are the first three taxes, and they're all asset based. And this is one of the things that was really important to the for the gross receipts tax, because that was one of the things we were absolutely targeted to get rid of, because you buy something, it should be yours, and you should not have a tax put on it after you own it. And I'll mention this a little bit more later. The silent tax, of course, is inflation, and everybody knows what that is. That's brought about, by the way, because we have fiat money now. And the fourth one is taxes on what we buy, and that's called a transactional tax, and that's where gross receipts tax sits. They also used value-added tax, the VAT, which was as a good goes through its distribution from beginning to the end user, everybody tax only the part that they added to it. That's why it's called value added. Okay, the paperwork on that is horrendous. Not so much now with computers, but it's unnecessary. And in order to raise the same amount of money that a gross receipts tax would, you would have to raise the VAT tax significantly. So
you mentioned fiat money. That would be money that's not gold based, correct? Not
exactly. Yes, that's exactly right.
I just wanted to offer that clarification a little bit, and maybe you could tell a little bit more to people.
Okay.
What that actually means.
Yeah. There are five kinds of money. There's barter, but that's not very efficient because barter is not divisible very well. So one farmer has a cow, another farmer has a chicken. You can't trade a cow and a chicken straight across. And the guy with the cow says, I don't want 50 chickens. I only want one. So barter is not very efficient that way. It is if the values are the same, but since some of them are not divisible, it's a bit of a problem. Then there's species money. Species money is gold and silver, and that's what the Constitution specifies. I think it's 365.64 grams of pure silver is equal to $1. And the founders used the Spanish dollar, and the lady would call it dollars, and broke it into 8 pieces. That's where we got pieces of 8. And I don't know if anybody remembers this anymore because we don't have coins anymore, but 25 cents was 2 bits because it was 2 bits of 8 pieces. And 50 cents was 4 bits. Okay. So the nice thing about species money is you can't multiply it because it's you can't print up more money off of it. That's the first one. The next one is called fractional money, meaning that the amount of gold or silver is fractionally backed. And when that first started, it was, I think, 85% had to be backed in gold or silver for what they printed. But that fraction went lower and lower and lower until it became zero, and then that was fiat money. So fiat money is not backed by gold or silver. It's backed by the good faith that people have to use that money to buy goods and services. So it's really from this country. So it's really the demand that people have for U.S. goods, and that's what gives our money value now. However, that changes over time, and now and then you mentioned that the Fed came in and took over the management and control of our currency, and they have been printing it like it's going out of style.
And I want to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I try to always be at least 99.9% correct. The Federal Reserve is actually a private government corporation?
No, it's not. No, the
Okay.
Federal Reserve, is a Federal Reserve Bank. That's what it is. Okay, and it was started in as you pointed out in 1913 December, when the legislation passed that. But it basically transferred the control and currency to the Fed, which was a private organization uh, set up initially to protect their member banks and to control the all the currency for the country through the use of the interest rate. So, and it's interesting that you should mention this because it's not a government agency. You know, they call it federal, but it's not. It's not government. It Federal Reserve. It has no reserves, and it's not a bank.
Wow. Question to you.
Yeah.
FDR signed into order the gold standard, taking everyone's gold to as well, correct?
Yes, he did, and that's because we had printed more money than we had gold to cover it.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
glad, by the way, that I was 99.9% incorrect. Actually, when I was in school, I actually I was asked, the class was asked, the Mongolian nation, what was the best warfare terrain? I said strictly mountainous regions, and that was nowhere near the fact. It was actually, of course, the deserts. But this way here, everyone in class remembered it. So hopefully they will have remembered this answer that you just gave to the question I was asking you. The reason our dollar is so inflated is due to the fact that we are in the same spot yet again, and we don't have gold to back our debts. Is that yes or no?
Yeah, we do not have enough gold to back all of our currency, as far as I know. I haven't checked on this, but if we were to back all of our currency, we would be able to pay back the national debt, which is $34 trillion. Okay. Now that $34 trillion, we owe that, most of it, to the American people because the government drained all of the or several of the departments in the government. For instance, Social Security. It's a little more complicated than I'm making out, but basically is they took all the money out of Social Security, put it in the general fund, and now they're paying all Social Security survivors out of the general fund. But the interest, or the Social Security funds, were supposed to be put in a special fund to earn interest, and and that's how people were supposed to retire. Now they did have a provision in there that if there was excess money in the Social Security fund, that they could use it for other purposes, which they certainly did. But Social Security is has some reserves, and we're into those reserves now. And I think in 2035, those reserves will be exhausted, and Social Security then will have no reserves. Okay. So it was actually Johnson that did that under the unified budget. We're getting away from gross receipts taxes here, but
Right.
but that's what's happened to our currency. So, anyways, let's get back to the gross receipts tax just for a second.
Sure.
The gross receipts tax is a transactional tax paid at the time of the purchase, with no claim on the property that you purchased after you bought the property by the government or anybody else thereof. Okay, this applies to when you're buying a loaf of bread or a house. Okay, there's no strings attached to something as soon as you buy it. So in one statement, and I know that this is a quick way to do it, and there's lots of details in here which we'll get to if we have time. The gross receipts tax is a tax on all goods and services sold in the state, included in the price of whatever sold, remitted to the government by sellers only on a quarterly basis, and replaces and abolishes all other taxes, fees, and assessments. So once you buy something, as I said, a loaf of bread or a house, once you paid for it, it's yours. The government can never sell it on the steps of the courthouse at a tax sale, because there's no property tax. Okay? And they can never come and get your combine because you didn't pay personal property tax on it, right? So so that's the difference between asset-based taxes and transactional taxes. Once the transaction is done, the taxes are done. So once you have paid for the good or services, the price is included in the price. It's yours. So what you see on the store shelf as the price of whatever you're buying, you go to the cash register, you pay that amount of money, and that's all.
And that's the taxes included in that price.
Well, it can be, it may be, okay. It depends. It depends on the vendor. If he wants to pass it along, which they all do, right? He can,
Right.
but he could run a sale and say, it's just passed through for me, so I'm gonna give you the benefit of this tax, and we're gonna run a sale this weekend or something. So he's responsible. The vendor is responsible to send in the gross receipts of the tax, the gross receipts of the sale. So
and you did imply at one time in our discussion that it would be the vendor, the business, what have you. They would basically be paying a little bit more sizable initial tax of operation, correct? The businesses,
businesses,
trickle it
yeah.
down.
Well, let's just follow this through for a second. If a product goes through, say, 5 vendors before it comes to the end vendor, you, right? The first one might be the manufacturer, and he is responsible when he sells it to the distributor. He'll be responsible for that gross receipts tax, sending it to the government. Then the distributor, when he sells it onto the wholesaler, then he will be responsible for paying that amount. It's like it's like buying a ticket from New York to LA. You pay from New York to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Denver, and from Denver to Las Vegas, and from Las Vegas to LA. And and it's like buying a ticket as it goes through each of those stops. And you just buy the ticket and send the money into the government. Okay? That's why it's so
Yes.
powerful. Okay, and it's a usually in Oregon, when we did it in Oregon, the the percentage that we used was 2%, and that was that didn't hurt them. That didn't hurt people very badly, but because it touches every transaction, it is very powerful. And I mentioned that little article on Oregon, and now they're afloat with money, and that's because it's that gross receipts tax was in place, and most of the Oregonians were totally unaware of it.
Wow.
Um, let's see.
Do you want to just take a break, or do you want to go right into the attributes of the GRT? Because there's been 3 questions asked, or 2 questions asked. I didn't know if you wanted to take these questions first.
Oh, sure, we'll take the questions first.
Okay. Um, as an economist, how do you feel about FDR not setting up Social Security in a way it cannot be robbed to pay Peter?
Uh, well, that's beyond the scope of the GRT. That's a federal problem,
Okay.
and and the only way that that basically can be solved is for the government, who has taken all of that money out of Social Security. They need to restore that to the Social Security fund. Unfortunately, the only way they can do that is print more money to put back in there. So that exacerbates
The
uh,
situation.
the inflation problem. So I don't know how it's going to fix. I didn't want to get into Social Security because I don't have a good answer for that. But I
Gotcha.
don't. But I don't think anybody does.
Right. And
Okay?
lastly, before we get going again, continuing on, it would also help if we weren't feeding all of China, etc., and focusing more here at home. And I've been saying this myself, that I believe in the state of Missouri, it would be nice to build up our within the state, interstate commerce and trade. Because I think if you have a very good, strong commerce and trade within the state itself, you're keeping that money flowing again here, and it has an actual better opportunity for the taxpayers to control and have more money in the long run. I may be wrong, or is that just a pipe dream that I've got?
No. Well, from an economist standpoint, you want to keep your own economy robust. Now, I've come up with a little saying that I'm sure you're going to get lots of calls on this. They will, but for years, um, Americans have been so price conscious that when they walk into the store, they buy the cheapest thing there is. Okay, and so basically, what's happened over the years is um, is excellent fiscal management by China, because they've been selling us McDonald Happy Meal toys, and they've been taking our dollars, and they've been buying gold to someday back their currency, I suspect. And they've been using those dollars that we've been sending over there for their McDonald Happy Meal toys. I shouldn't say that, but it's true.
Well, yeah, no,
Uh,
you're absolutely correct.
but what they're doing now is they are buying up land and businesses in the United States. Perfect example, I live in a county here where Smithfield now, which was an American company, is now owned by China. And so and I know at other parts of the country they've been buying up large tracts of land. So yeah, there's a difference between free trade and fair trade.
Correct.
See? And we can't hardly sell anything to them. And if they do, I think they have a tariff about 300%. I think Harley Davidson was having a problem because they couldn't afford to send their bikes to China because the tariff on it was so horrendous. But we're
Right.
letting all that stuff come in from China, with no tariffs. It just flows right in. Now, the only person that I know of that did something about that in recent history was Trump. And he said anything that comes from China is going to have a tariff on it. And that helped in the short run. But China has so much money of ours, they're coming over and they're buying us out. Much easier to do that than to fight us and get
And
the land.
Gerald here says that they evade state property tax in Missouri. China.
That's probably, I don't know if that's true or not. They might register it as a foreign country or something like that. However, I don't want them to avoid paying property tax. I want everybody to avoid paying property tax.
And you know what? On that note, I think we need to get on with this. The attributes of the GRT, folks, there's actually 8 that are listed here in front of me. So let's hit that first one there, if you don't mind. The GRT is a constitutional amendment to the Missouri Constitution designed to protect the amendment or article from the legislature and the courts. Property taxes, income tax, estate tax, and all other fees, taxes, assessments, and any other revenue generating mechanisms are abolished except as expressly provided by the article, basically the GRT. Can you explain that in better detail?
Yes, in fact, I think the best way to do that is to read the article itself. Property, income, and all other taxes, fees, assessments, and other revenue generating mechanisms are abolished and prohibited in this state, except as expressly provided in this article, which is the GRT. And the GRT is a replacement tax for all those other taxes. So again, the issue is once you buy something, it should be yours without any strings attached to it. Now, there's a couple of things here that I'll just add in here. One of the things that happens here is the money. There's two levels of taxes here, and I didn't do it in the attributes. These were sort of afterthoughts. But there's 2 levels of taxes. There's the state tax, okay, and that state tax goes to the state, and they fund all of the budgets in the state until they're fully funded. And any taxes and any revenue that's received that's in addition to what's necessary to fund those budgets goes into a stabilization fund.
Excess money goes into a stabilization fund.
The excess money goes into a stabilization fund, and the stabilization fund is like a little savings account. Okay, it's not accessible to the legislature except if there's a shortfall in revenue and you have to go into the stabilization fund and borrow some to cover the budgets.
An emergency fund.
Pardon?
It's like an emergency fund.
Yeah, a little bit like that. But this is the important thing here, is that the state budget is fixed, okay? And it can only be adjusted by two methods. One is CPI, Consumer Price Index, or inflation. It'll go up with inflation. And the second way is for them to, and this is the important part here, the only second way that they can do that, increase the budget at the state level, is to increase the rate, the gross receipts rate, so it brings in more money. And the only way that they can raise the rate is if they get a majority vote in a general election from the public. Okay? And the other tax, the second tax, is called the local tax. And the local tax applies to taxing districts in the state.
County.
So that not the county. Okay, they're groups of counties.
Gotcha.
Okay, if you don't have something to balance off St. Louis and Kansas City, they will run the whole economy. A little county like Sullivan County, they're like a spit in the ocean. They can't do anything. But that's why in all of these things where they're voted not only by the number of people that cast their ballot being a majority, but also it has to be a majority of the counties or the precincts within the county if it's for the local tax. See, that way it's everybody gets to say, has a say in it. It's like the electoral college at the federal level. It protects the counties that have small populations.
Gotcha.
Okay. So that's an important issue here. For the local tax, those are for the district, and the district would all get together and they will list all of the projects that they would like to do in the district, and they'll figure out how much the total amount's going to be, and it usually runs for 2 years, and they have to build the project, do whatever they're going to do, and in 2 years it's paid for. Okay, so that's one of the things that has to happen for that, for the local tax. And that also, the voters for that are in the local taxing district, so that it doesn't go to St. Louis or Kansas City for a general election or a majority vote, because they will override it all the time. And so that's why they're in taxing districts, so that they can get their own stuff done. And as soon as the project is done, then the tax returns to its base again. Okay, so that's the 2 levels of taxes, which is that's quite important to understand. And the other thing that happens is in the stabilization fund. Any excess revenue goes into the stabilization fund, and you're allowed to gather in the stabilization fund enough money to cover 2 budgetary periods. That's a lot of money. Okay, yeah, and if you have to dip into it or whatever, but because it has to be a balance, or it has to be a budget that has to be balanced, any excess goes into the stabilization fund. It doesn't go into somebody's piggy bank. Okay, and the second thing that the stabilization fund does is it will take on the responsibility of paying off all bonded indebtedness for the state. So the state will be debt free. So we're going to pay off all the bonds that we've gotten for schools and highways and bridges and everything else. Pay them all off so that we're debt free. And then the third thing is that all fines, penalties, and forfeitures will go to the stabilization fund, and this is to make sure that that the justice system remains just. I'll tell you one little story, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a judge who passes sentence on a defendant, and he might say, well, you're going to spend 3 weeks in jail or something like that. Now, this particular judge owns the jail. Okay? So in my mind, that's a clear conflict of interest.
Of interest, yeah.
Yeah, you could be, you get to levy the fine and you get to benefit from it. That's why
Yes.
all fines, penalties, and forfeitures go into the stabilization fund. Now, this is, if there's excess revenue after that, then it goes to reduce the rate, the state rate. Okay? And so it's a perfect circle. If there's too much money comes into the government, it goes to the stabilization fund, and you get your safety net. Then you get out of your bonded indebtedness, and then it goes to reduce the rate. And so the idea is to have your revenue coming into the government, and the budget be equal all the time, or pretty close to it. See what a nice system this is.
Well, it would. It's theoretically on paper, it definitely sounds good.
Well, I know. Well, it does sound good because theoretically it is good.
It is good. Yes.
You know. So go ahead. You had another question.
Well, so
I got you off track a little bit.
Well, let's go back. Let's go back here on your number 2. You wrote, although the tax is relatively small, the GRT is a very powerful tax because it is included in the price and touches, again, virtually every transaction. So I think you had already covered that. Yes or no?
We did. Yeah, we covered that. But this is the best part about this. When the consumer buys something, he's done with taxes. He doesn't have anything to do with taxes anymore. And whatever he's bought is his. Okay. But you're right, and I read that little thing from Oregon. They had the GRT working in Oregon, and they ended up with so much money that they had to rebate it back to the taxpayers. Well, that normally should have gone to a stabilization fund.
Correct. Okay? I'm going to ask you about that.
And then what should have happened, which they didn't, they totally messed up the principle. Well, I'm not going to say that. The politicians knew exactly what they were doing. And it would have gone into the stabilization fund. It would have provided a safety net for years when the revenue didn't come in like it should. And then it also would have got rid of all bonded indebtedness in the state. And then the rate would have been adjusted because of excess revenue.
Let me ask you this. Have the politicians basically in Oregon at this point, are they maybe in a position where they're setting this up to actually fail by doing the 45% back to the people?
No, I think they have a balanced budget amendment, and so they have to do something with the money.
Oh, okay.
And since they don't have a stabilization fund set up, which they would have had if they'd have read our article, which they should have, they have to get rid of it. So they sent it back to the taxpayer.
Well, let's look at number 3. The GRT is a protection from outside forces over which you have no control for your income, home, vehicles, anything else that you have purchased. Do you want to continue with the rest of that?
Sure.
For example, if you don't mind, continue.
Yeah. For example, um, uh, just one word here. These outside forces um, are are strings that the government has on your personal assets, such as personal property tax, income, um, fees, whatever. They have little strings on it, and if you don't do this, then you get leaned. If you don't pay it, then you get leaned. Now, this is for example. If you have a house and you've lived in it for 50 years and you love your home, and all of a sudden uh, uh, a, um, a a slick salesman comes in, starts selling property around you, and what used to be Goat Hill is now um, a very popular thing, um, and so then everybody starts building in expensive houses around you, right? What happens to the assessed value of your little house?
It goes. I would like
They
to think that.
reassess it. They
Yeah, they
reassess it, don't
reassess
they?
it,
They
and you would
reassess
think
it.
it would go up.
Yeah, they reassess it, and all of a sudden your property taxes go up. And when your property and it could very well go up enough that you can't afford to pay them anymore. And then they put a lien on your property, and then it goes to the courthouse, and then you lose your home. Okay, so that that's a situation where you have assessed value of property taxes. But there's something else that's really important here too, and that is it's a protection against inflation for your personal assets. For example, if you if you if the if we have inflation and the government budgets go up with inflation, right? And they don't have enough money, they go back down to the property tax and they increase your property tax, right? But
Right.
under the GRT, this could not happen because there is no property tax.
Right. You've already paid on the sale of the house.
Yeah, you didn't pay property tax at the sale of the house. You paid a gross receipts tax.
Tax. Correct.
Okay, property tax
Right.
is abolished.
Right.
We're not paying property tax anymore. We're going to be
I'm
like the
sorry.
Chinese.
I got confused for a moment. Come on, Colin.
No, I understand. I understand. But the point is that I don't know how China worked this out, so they don't have to pay property tax, but they should have let us know. Okay? But this is the way to do it.
Well,
So
we see that we do see that across the nation with a lot of businesses come in from out of the country. A lot of business owners that come from out of the country, they get they get the exempt taxes, for
yeah,
5 years here and 5 years there, and they
yeah,
just pass that on within the family, so that 5 years in your name, and at year 4.5, you give it to me, your son. Now I've got 5 years of exemption, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like
yeah,
guaranteeing the future of the family, you know.
yes, yes. Um, and but who's picking up the slack on the exemptions?
Well, that would be
I
the
mean, who's paying
taxpayers
it?
themselves.
The taxpayer.
Yes.
Exactly right. And that's one of the things that's in the GRT. You buy it as a seller, you sell it, you pay the GRT. It doesn't matter who you are or what you're selling.
Yep.
And that
Well,
goes for services as well. So the only anomaly about services is if you're a big company, each person that works in the company is selling their services to the company, and theoretically they should send in their gross receipts tax off of their check every month or week. But in that case, the company can take it off as a deduction and send it all in at once. That's just to make it more efficient.
right. You already covered, I know you already covered the rate is calculated by the government finance department with a stabilization fund. So I guess we could go to number 5, which is the size of the government should shrink over time as positions become redundant.
Yes.
No jobs will be lost, but some positions will be eliminated through the attrition.
Through attrition, right? And this is something that would have to be decided by the legislature on what to do that with that. But our thought originally was that people could stay in those positions even though there was nothing to do until they either got transferred out or found another job or stayed there because they only had 2 years till their retirement, and they just sat there and did nothing for 2 years. So we didn't want to put people out of jobs, out of the government. But as time goes on, then with those jobs being eliminated through attrition, the size of the government would decrease. This was the problem. This was the problem that the public employees retirement system was having an issue with, because it was shrinking the number of public employees who were contributing into their retirement funds. See? And that's why they took us to court in Oregon, to the Supreme Court. See? And there was nothing legally wrong with the article or anything like that. They just wanted to make sure that they delayed it long enough so that it didn't get on the ballot. There are some exemptions, okay? And I think it's worth noting what these exemptions are. Social Security is exempted, okay, because it's a return on investment. Other retirement payments are exempted. Pensions are exempted. Disability plan payments, sales outside the normal course of business are exempted if they're less than $2,500, and that covers the people having garage sales or something like that, because it's too hard and difficult to go get the gross receipts tax from a garage sale. Okay, intergovernmental transactions are also exempted because they're just trading money back and forth. They're not producing or selling or buying anything. The other thing is that, and we left this open, thinking that our government was honest enough to make sure that this didn't get out of hand. So the government, they can exempt anything the legislature wants to exempt. Okay, and those would be things like churches or nonprofit organizations are exempt from the GRT. Okay, so that you or 501c3 corporations, they can all make a case to not have to pay gross receipts tax. So those are the only exemptions that they would have, but it would be in the, now this really brings up another question, because they would have no reason to exempt a company that comes from China from paying the gross receipts tax, because they would be hurting themselves and their government, unless they were benefiting from it personally.
Right.
And there would be no reason to exempt a company that does business like anybody else, and end up doing that.
Well, in number six, I think this is really going to be another happy spot for people. Sellers who fail to remit the GRT to the government shall be subject to a civil lawsuit and not a criminal prosecution.
Yes, and I thought that Al Capone would have really liked this one.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
because they got him on tax evasion
Right.
and sent
I
him to
was thinking
jail.
actually Hunter would probably like this right now too.
He would like it as well.
Yes.
And I think that I think even Trump might like it.
Well, the thing is, though, Trump seems to be pretty much financially sound with his financial record so far.
Yeah,
There's
I
nothing
know.
out of the ordinary. Let's put it
No,
like
I
that.
know. I know. I think that most of the cases that are against him are going to end up not going anywhere anyway. It
No.
truly is. It truly is um, political interference.
Yes.
That's what it is. But
But getting back to this here about the civil lawsuits and the criminal prosecution, two totally different ways of going about basically getting caught up with,
yes,
you
yeah.
know,
So in a if somebody gets behind in their taxes, doesn't send it in, doesn't do this, then there's penalties involved in it for not paying it on time. Okay, because you have it at one point, because you don't even collect it until you've made the sale and the person's paid for it. Then you have it. But if you use it somewhere else instead of sending it into the government, and then you get behind in that, then there's a penalty for it. And it's not an onerous penalty, but it's enough to make you aware of it. And and then ultimately you can it can be resolved by you going to court and they charging you um, not to put you in jail. There's no point in doing that. Then it just
right.
costs us money, and there's no way for him to recover and pay it.
No.
So 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 that's why that went into a civil lawsuit and not a criminal lawsuit. Not paying your taxes as a seller, that's the only one it would apply to, because as a buyer, there are no taxes that you ever have to account for, okay, as a consumer. So you won't be going to jail, or you won't be going to a, a courts or anything because you bought something and paid for it. It's only the
Gotcha.
sellers if they don't send the money into the government.
Right
Okay?
on. And then you have exemptions for number seven, the Social Security or other retirement payments. I think people are really going to like this in the long run. But you've got your exemptions with the pension or disability plan payments, sales outside the course of business less than 2,500, intergovernmental transactions or anything from legislature exemptions like churches, not-for-profit organizations, etc., that are exempt from the GRT.
Right. And as I was saying, um, the legislature can exempt anything they want to, but churches is a good one because because normally they're exempt now, and the same with other nonprofit organizations. They can make a case to be exempted from the gross receipts tax. Uh, uh, what 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 does not make sense is if the government exempts organizations like big companies, unless they have something coming to them that should be going to the government but is going to them.
Politically.
um, okay, politically is good, is a good word.
That's really what it, that's
So
how a lot, I'm
that's
going to
what
say it like
see,
this, that's how the coffers grow. When the DNC has like, I don't know, I'm just going to throw an arbitrary number out there. When the DNC has, say, $500 million that came from someone somewhere, and usually maybe it's only maybe a couple people. It's not you and it's not me because we're not the ones throwing $150,000, $200,000 around. It's people like Mark Zuckerberg who throws 500 million into the coffers. You
well,
know,
fine, if he wants to do that, he wants something out of it.
correct.
He's buying something, and
He's
I don't know
buying.
what he.
He's buying. What he's buying is that they don't move forward with. I believe it's called Section 230 or 240, where they're looking at breaking down the monopoly more or less of the internet. and Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Because
but
censorship
those are in
too.
law. That's in law,
Yeah.
and 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 we're not supposed to have monopolies. There's a law against that,
But
and
we
he's just trying
actually
to
do.
buy himself out of it.
Yes.
And he's got some politicians that are saying, I could put this on a slow train or on the no train, as long as you keep funding my
Agenda.
uh, my agenda or my election.
Yeah.
And it's those people that we need to, I don't know. um, uh, okay, I know we're being recorded here, but they're crooks, and they should be they
Oh,
should
yeah.
they should
It's okay to use that word. They're crooks. They are corrupt. They
I don't
are.
know how you can go into the I don't know how you can go into the Senate, make $180,000, and in 5 years you come out a multimillionaire.
Yes.
How does that happen?
I think someone just recently said to me, Vince, never let an honest man will never become a politician because in the long run they're going to have to become corrupt.
Oh, that might be true. I mean, I ran for politics, as a commissioner here for the local um, county. I
Oh, oh, oh,
I
oh! I wanted to tell that story. Well, no, you know what,
Yeah,
Gabe? You can
go
tell
ahead.
that story. Yeah, you can do that, please.
Okay, well, I ran for my career has been in community and economic development overseas for years, and I was helping countries. And then when I retired, I came and I looked at our system here, and our county, and I said, I know exactly what's wrong with this. You have the wrong tax system here, and all you have to do is a little tiny click, and you make it right, and you will have money flowing into the county coffers, in addition to the 5 million that comes from all taxes, an extra $20 million. So that would make the total be $25 million. And I tried to explain that to them, what they did, and I listened to a political expert who said, "Why don't you, in your campaign, offer to donate back half of your salary, just like Donald Trump did for the first year or something?" But he donated it all back. But you could donate half of it. Well, I was charged in the courts for trying to give the county money, um, and I specifically wanted it to go to the road district because the county totally screwed that system up, and now we have the worst roads in the world. And I said this will go to fix the road system temporarily until we come up with a long-term solution. Anyways, I got charged for trying to influence the electorate.
Yeah.
Okay, it's called making a campaign promise and keeping it. And uh,
Yeah.
and so they offered me either prison or a $2,000 fine. It was a misdemeanor, or to do public service. I did the public service, which was to explain exactly the plan that I would have implemented had I gone to become a
County
commissioner.
commissioner.
Yeah, a county commissioner, and and we would have been by far and away the wealthiest and well-funded county in the state had they listened to that. But they would not listen to it. The prosecutor said to me, I said, I'll go present it to the commissioners, and he said, no, you won't. And I said, why not? He said, well, and this is his word, quote unquote, they hate you. They won't listen to one word you say. And I said, fine, then you do it. Well, and nothing ever happened. And I went I went and asked for a copy of those reports that I gave the prosecutors. Nobody could find them, and so and I'm not really. I'm actually glad I didn't get in, because I think that I would have found more things that I want to. And but I was up against an unbeatable candidate. He was young, strong, handsome, and related to half the county. So so I was dead in the water before I started. So,
Yeah, see that's so sad because you're really not trying to influence. You're just making, like you said, a campaign promise. I could do this job for half the amount, and so on
and
and
you'd be
so
better
forth.
off.
And yeah, and you'll be better off in the long run. And they just look at it as you're bribing the vote.
Yeah, that's what the law said.
Yeah,
Now, the nice thing about this is the plan that I had for them would cost the local people in the county hardly anything. 90 some percent of the production that happens in this county leaves the county as wholesale goods. There's no tax on wholesale goods. Okay? And so
right.
that tax is passed along till whatever sold in Chicago or New York or China, and they receive their retail tax on it, their sales tax on it, but they never send anything back to the county. Okay? This way, the county sells or buys so little of that production that the effect that it would have had on them would have been minuscule, but the benefit to the county would have been enormous. So, so that's the end of that story.
Well,
I'm
you
not
know
running
what?
for office again.
You know what? And we're going to put an end to this story here with the GRT. Uh, last point, folks, here is, and Colin, if you may, number 8. The local projects will be funded by an additional GRT after 2 years, which will pay for the project, and the rate will return to the original rate.
Yeah, and you remember that uh, I told you that there were two taxes. One was a state tax, and one was the local GRT. Okay,
Yes.
and the local GRT is made up by the districts who get together and say, okay, these are the projects that we want to do in the district. We will raise the tax 1/4% or 1/2%, whatever it is, and that will go into a fund, and it'll fund the project, and it's usually 2 years, and by that time you have enough money to pay the project off, and you're not in debt. And uh, so again, it goes back to the people. So even in the district, in the local taxing district, they have to go to the people, and they have to get a majority vote to do it. And the majority vote says, we don't really care about that bridge. And if they can't make a good case to the public, then they can't do it. And I think that seems reasonable. It's because the public are the ones that are paying for it.
Well, I believe, because the number 2 has come up now twice in the past several months with me discussing um, the layout of governance here in the state of Missouri, going back to the basics and fundamental foundation of our living, breathing document called the Constitution. And it would only take about 2 years, really, to really see a big change. And now you're also saying with this, it would be about 2 years before the benefits would be completely visible and understood by the citizens or taxpayers, correct?
Well, no, I don't. I think it could be much sooner than that. As soon as it's enacted, and you increase the rate at the local level, you can immediately start putting money away for that project in an interest-bearing account, and at the end, the account pays for the project, and the district is out of debt. However, on the state level, since we don't know exactly what percentage that is, which we'll have to try and calculate with the Department of Statistics, I would make that first year a little bit higher to make sure that everybody is fully funded, and then we'll let it go around one loop, and then we will know where we were, if we need to adjust the budgets or adjust the rate, or ask the people if we can adjust the rate, or see that we have that's raised much more money than we thought it was going to, and then we kick into the stabilization fund.
Right. And that seems like it would work out very nicely.
I think it would.
Well,
it did in Oregon. It did in Oregon if they would have implemented it.
Right.
Now they're making so much money that they're returning it. 45% of your income tax is going back. Does that give you some idea of how powerful this is?
Oh yeah, I know that Minnesota did. I know that in Minnesota back in the early 90s, I want to say, we had a governor by the name of Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yeah.
He was a wrestler, Navy SEAL, a mayor in Brooklyn Center, I believe it was. And he ultimately became governor. And the amazing part about his governorship was, while he was in office, we actually did get a rebate check back.
Yeah.
And that was very nice to get that.
Yeah, and I know that's really helpful. But the long-term solution, of course, is to eventually reduce the rate. Then the benefits go to everybody, and you don't have to, and it's evenly distributed by what you buy.
Which means if it were to be implemented hypothetically, this coming year, the state of Missouri says we're going to implement the GRT. The tax is going to be 6% across the board. Everyone pays 6%, but the following year it would drop maybe down to 4% or 4.5.
Yes.
And then the year after that, it would drop down to maybe 3.2, and then it would be stabilized for another 2 years. And everyone's benefiting from that because everyone's paying a lower tax.
Yes, and the idea is this has a direct bearing on the power of lobbyists as well, because there's no special deals going on.
Correct.
They're going to buy whatever they're going to buy. It's included in the price of whatever they're buying, and as sellers, they just send it in. There's no special deal.
But see, that's where you were talking about the crooks that we have, because a lot of BS.
Maybe we should vote them out.
Well, that's what we need to do.
Once we identify them.
I'll tell you what. I've got 2 right now in my crosshairs, and I ain't talking bow and arrow or my rifle. I'm talking about crosshairs of politicians, doing wrong, that aren't living up to their oath of office. And we do need to hold people accountable. We do need to pull them out of office, because once again, like you said, we've got to get rid of these Nancy Pelosi's of the world.
Well, I think, I agree with that. But there's also politicians in there who are do-gooders, who are saying, I think that we should do this because this is something that I really like, and I want to promote this and stuff like that. But never go to the public and ask if it's all right to spend their money doing it.
Correct.
They need
to go. That's where we should vote on it.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is designed to do.
Yeah, see, I got an HOA in my crosshairs.
No pet projects unless you get the permission of the people.
Right. I live in an HOA here called Lake Viking Association. It's the Home Oppressors Association. We've got a group of Karens in there. They're empty bobbleheads. And these clowns are actually building a jetty of which we have no control of, and money is being funded, and they are telling us, well, when we sell this one property, it will pay for the jetty. Excuse me. So you're expecting to sell a property that may take 5 or 10 years to sell, and it may not even come at the price that you want. But in the meantime, you want to up our dues to kind of give it the buffer.
You know,
So
you know what that's called in the GRT?
what's that?
Other revenue generating mechanisms abolished.
And rightfully so, they should be.
See,
Colin,
yeah.
I told you this. I mean, I respect you. I mean, you caught my attention when I first met you several months ago at a Constitution Party meeting. And I mean this sincerely. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, independent, liberal. It doesn't really matter. If you're a Democratic, socialist, Marxist, I don't care, but really I do. The thing is, folks, it's not only knowing what party to vote for, what party has the common sense, what party has, more importantly, or in some cases, the individuals that you're electing, what they have in their hearts for you. It's not for me, me. And it shouldn't be that way.
Well,
but Colin, I met you a couple months ago. I thanked you way back then. I mean, you caught me completely off guard. I was looking for you without even knowing what I was looking for. Seriously.
Well, those people are not supposed to be doing that. They're supposed to be obeying the law. Well, this is why this is a constitutional amendment. They must be fenced in by the law.
Yes. And it always starts, and I say this more and more often. I believe it starts in your own county or in your own community. We cannot change the world. Am I right, Colin? We can't change the world, but we can change our own state.
I think we can, and getting some antiquated and outdated laws out that have so many holes in it, they're like a sieve, and put in this law. There's a mechanism for making it all work and balance all the time. It's a very sophisticated, cool idea. I wish I would have thought about it all by myself, but Dale was the one that was the main architect on it, and he was brilliant.
The thing is, Colin, if it wasn't for Dale being a part of your life, this probably would have gone non-existent. It probably, because you helped move it. And that's kind of how I feel. Like I said, I have up here on this banner, I don't know everything. None of us do, but it's who we surround ourselves with. And Colin, God willing, if things go the direction of which I hope to see they go, a nobody like myself, surrounded by beautiful people like you, intelligent men like you, and women. And there's many more people, folks, coming on very soon. I've already had several. Tom Martz, you remember Tom from the meeting? He came on. Wonderful interview. If you folks really want to get a good a belly full and a mind full, Tom's quite a character. I love Tom. Paul Venable, our chairman of the Constitution Party. It's the people that you surround yourself with that are wanting to do the right things. And Colin, I just have to say, I feel very honored and privileged. I'm humbled by the fact that you've taken time to join me here. And more importantly, that you've actually taken time, whether the people that don't see it right now, the ones that see it hopefully in the future, that you've taken the time to let them know there is hope. There is another way. We can actually push this movement, if you may want to call it as such, and make it work and grow for our state. And I thank you. I thank you very, very much for taking this time, Colin.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and thank you very much for having me on here.
Let
I
me,
was nervous. I was nervous, but you put me at ease.
that's because I gave you all those whiskey shots and you didn't even feel them. Remember, we're sitting at the bar. But no, Colin, if I may ask you to, um, what would you like to tell everyone here in closing? How about, first off, have you ever done a podcast before?
No,
I think you're up for the Emmy. We're gonna have to give you an Emmy award, I think. I mean, you look very dapper. I love the pens in the pocket. I love the I love your look. You were very sharp. But seriously, for a first time podcast, you did very, very, very well, and I thank you. Um, in closing, what would you like to say to the people here in Missouri, and of course around the world? Because was just told earlier that we actually have like 183, 185 people listening on another channel. We had the phone number up and no one called in. I'm kind of surprised. I guess it was so captivating a conversation with you, or the material that you were giving was so captivating. What would you like to say to everyone, please, sir?
I would like to say this. Um, the GRT will save this. Will save this state and this country, because we need to put this stuff into law and have our politicians um, be be adherent to the law. And we need to get, so tell your friends. That's what you need to do. We need to tell friends. I made a constitutional amendment, and I'm not going through the legislature to do it, because if I put it through the legislature, they're going to do exactly the same thing that Oregon did, okay, which was fiddle with it. And so I want it to go. I want the people to vote on it, to understand and vote on it, and 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 I think that Paul Venable has a copy of this on a website, and I'll make sure that he does. We need to get that out to you at some point. Maybe you can advertise it or something, and get people looking at it. We need signatures, and we need people who understand. We're not going to buy signature signers, people to do that, because they don't even know what they're signing. And so we're not going to pay for that. We want true patriots who understand what they're doing, and then you get that passion that's so necessary to convince people that this is good.
Well, I will tell you, Colin, I think this was very enlightening. I think it was very, I think you did. You brought it down to the notch of what right to every expectation I had. Initially listening to you, I have to tell you, it was, above my head, not somewhat above my head, but above my head. And when I asked you to send me that PDF of that one piece, and then to send and break down this piece that we read today, pretty much for this program, in layman terms for the common man, I want to say you did extremely well, I believe. And again, I thank you.
I think
Um, I did notice, though, folks, if you notice his title, it's Agricultural Resource Economics. You were over in Yemen, Sudan, Sri Lanka, several other Saudi nations. What do you see going on today? How has it changed? Are you happy you were there at one time? Was it beneficial at one time? Or has it basically gone down to crapper?
it depends on the project. Yemen was not very successful, I don't think, in the long run. We poured a lot of money in there, but but those countries, especially Arab countries, all hang off of the president, and he was usually there as a military coup, as a result of a military coup. And so anything that we did um, was would be gone the next president that came along, or the next leader. And so it was a very unstable government, and that's a problem with that. The Sri Lankan project was a good project. I made a movie of it. It was an hour-long movie of it. It was an excellent project. And Bangladesh, we did a few little things there. And Sudan, those people are so poor. They you know, there were Ethiopian refugee kids in Sudan that were sleeping on the streets because they had nowhere to go. And so I every time I went by them, I got a whole pile of little notes, and I gave them that money, and I said, go buy food and get to school. And they ended up calling me Mr. Mudresa, Mr. School. And it was the only way for them to get out of that. But what they did end up doing is buying gasoline and sniffing the things. Yeah. So sad. And so the one that I was happiest about was Sri Lanka. That was a good project. That was 8 years long, and we did really a good job of that. But I see that they're at war now, and north and south, and now Yemen is shooting the ships out of the Red Sea. You know, that was an unstable government, and they this is what I would like to say about those two before I leave, and this is the last I'll say, is that the people over there are wonderful. They are absolutely wonderful people. It's the leaders that are so screwed up, and the people just follow along because they don't know, but they're wonderful people. And I have, I have a lot of friends over there that that I'm going to miss.
Well, I want to thank you very much, sir, for being on here. You definitely, how does one put it? You definitely gave us a wonderful new view of what's going on, where we're at, and how we need to make we need a change. Because if we don't make a change now, everything we strive for the past several decades of our lives, for our families, our future, our kids, so on and so forth, all of that is going to be basically, it's going to be useless, because the way we are right now, we are on a track, in my opinion, mind you, and I don't want to be a negative person, but if we continue going down the path we're going on, this country is going to be not only bankrupt, but technically the world, being the number one, or we should be anyway, or be considered as such, being the number one world power, I believe, and I mean this, I do believe that the rest of the world's going to fall under with us.
Yes, I'm firmly of the opinion that the world will not be as tranquil as it is now forever here. We're going to have lots of problems here. We're already having problems in the Middle East, and with Iran and Hamas and Russia and the Ukraine. And I said this when Russia came to the edge of Ukraine. I said, I think that we have inadvertently lit the primer cord that leads to the magazine that's going to blow up Europe.
Yes.
Let's see how close I came to that. We'll see in a couple of years, see what happens. It has to go. It has to happen.
You mean we're going to have a world fall an economic world implosion?
Oh, we don't have implosions like that. Whenever we get in this situation, we always go to war, and that's what we'll do again.
It's explosion. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is,
I won't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
wish I was up there. I wish I was up there with you, sir. I think you've got about a good 12, 10, 12 on me, maybe a little more. Um, and by the way, I wanted to also let the audience know I had visited Colin for about a couple of 5, 6 hours. His wife made a lovely dinner for us midday, and beautiful home, beautiful scenery out in the country, surrounded by nature. And Colin, I must say, like yourself, I feel very blessed to be kind of at that in that area as well in life. It's the being in nature makes us realize how insignificant we are, how small we are, you know, and that's saying something. It looks like you've frozen up. It looks like we've frozen up.
no. I'm just listening to you.
Oh, okay. Well, I know I froze up. My head's just sitting down there. But
Yeah.
again, I want to thank you for taking the time for coming on, and bless you. I mean that. Bless you, your lovely wife. I look forward to seeing you again. Jerry, thank you. Ruth, Crystal, Chad, Dave. Uh, I mean, just all of you. Thank you. um, maybe that's not so good there, Chad. But no, again, thank you very much, Colin. I think I'm going to close this out and wrap this up for the evening. Um, in the Bible for myself, there's 3 books: Proverbs for wisdom, prayer, Psalms for prayer for not only myself but for the world, and and of course Ecclesiastics, which is time. And this, I believe, was very well spent time. So I thank you for coming on here, Colin.
Thank you. It was a privilege. It was my privilege. Thank you
I'll
very
give
much.
you I'll give you a call in a little bit when we're done here, unless you want to
Okay.
stay in the green room. Okay, you may
I don't
want to
know
hang
what
out for a
happens in
moment.
the green room.
Well, we got bagels and caviar with
Oh yeah,
champagne.
thanks. I'm at home, you know.
We're just joking. Thank you
I
very
know.
much, Colin, sir. Peace.
Thank you.
You're leaving. He left faster than he thought it was. You know, folks, I feel very blessed to have these people in my life. Colin is an exceptionally kind man, a very humble man. He he's done this from his heart for. He's worked with people who have done this from their hearts as well, working for all of us, all of you, everywhere. If you can get this incorporated into your state somehow, get it to one of your senators, your Congress, your governor, get it to your state legislation, get it to your representatives, get this message out. We pretty much gave you everything point by point, great examples of how to understand it and how to present it, I'm hoping. And it's very important that we do realize, and we're in some dire straits, much like what's going over on in the Red Sea over there that we were speaking of earlier, Yemen. We are in very, very, very dangerous waters. And if we do not do something about this as soon as possible, it's not going to take but a blink of an eye, snap of a finger. It's just going to be done. And it's going to be all hell, you know. Thank you very much for this one by Aristotle. I have spoken, you have learned, you have heard, you have the facts. Judge. This is on you to judge. We could keep on going down the path that we've been going, the slippery slope, as I call it. It's no longer a slippery slope. It's definitely an avalanche going down. Or we can make it change, but it's going to take work. It's going to take votes. It's going to take people passing knowledge along, passing information along. The Common Denominator Network is made up of many different programs. We've got the Logbook, which is a wonderful program with activists Kimberly Moyers and Dakota Moyers and their little baby B. Um, And they're for the veterans. They're doing things that are in leaps and bounds for the veterans out of the Houston area, and actually for the veterans around the country. And that's saying something. We've got Truck It. Truck It has a very unique lady. She sat around all her life, folks. She sat on her butt all her life, probably. That would be about 50 years driving a truck. Yeah, she sat on her butt all her life driving a truck. But going across the country, meeting the people she's met, being in the community she's been in, she's really learned a lot from many different cultures of people, many different regions of our United States. And she teams up with Chad Candy. What can we say about Chad? I call him personally, I'm going to say it, Chad, I'm giving you a shout out endearingly. You're my charming clown. Chad's got a great sense of humor, and the man, he actually pulled me out of a rabbit hole the other night. I was like, for a moment, I was thinking, oh gosh, China's going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be invaded if it keeps going the way it is at the border. Well, really, it has gone that route. It's been that bad. But seriously, Chad really helped me understand a little bit more about our, believe it or not, our military. I have a little bit more faith, not much more. But Chad brings a lot of humor. And he brings, well, I know how old she is. She started when she was like, I think 3. So she's only like 53. But seriously, Chad really does bring a lot of humor, a lot of definitely the devil's advocate with me. And that's with the Truck It again, Truck It. And then, of course, we've got Don Corleone with the Paramystic channel. And he has some very interesting people abroad in the Netherlands area. I think I could say, if I remember saying that correctly, in the Netherlands area. And these men and women are spiritually moved. I myself like to, even though I'm a Christian, notice I just said, even though I'm a Christian, I still believe in the I Ching, tarot cards, and the runes. But he's got some programs on there that I have to tell you, I've seen a couple of them in, between Odd and I want to say Sally or Sarah. I think it's Sally. But anyway, I mean, I saw this woman using her hands, waving it over colors she had drawn on paper, and the colors actually lifted off the paper onto her hand, and her hands were well over the paper by 4, 6, 8 inches. You can't make this up. It's energy that woman has. Boy, oh boy, to be touched. Oh, Anita, thank you. To see that and witness that, you're seeing a miracle of life. It just doesn't happen. I don't think, well, I don't know. I remember we used to rub balloons on our head and then stick them up on the ceiling. That isn't really maybe a miracle so much as it is the property factors of physics and so on and so forth. But, it worked. Oh, that's right. Some of those had helium in it. Just kidding. But seriously, we are trying to present and offer at the CDN, offer you a little bit different than what you're getting out there on news. I've reached out again. Tom Cruise, I got a call from Tom Cruise's campaign. Can you donate money? Can you donate money? Can you donate money? I said, yeah, how much you want? They said $50. I said, that ain't enough. Oh, you want to give more? Oh, I want to give you something you've never heard of before. And she said, what? I said, I want to give him something that's worth more than $50, more than $100. In fact, to me personally, more than $1,000. And she said, what? I said, I want to give him not 1, but 2 hours. Ted Cruz, I give you 2 hours to come on here and have a talk. And by the way, that invite goes out to each and every, well, let me put it like this. I will be very selective with the guests I have on, because if they're the loony left, if they're the libtards, if they're Marxist, socialist, communists, I will not be kind. I'm not like that. I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm going to be straightforward. Can't deal with. I know I've got to live around to live with. But, oh, yes, cyber warfare. I'm so sorry about that, Don Corleone. We've got a lot going on here, folks, and we want to become friends, and we want you to learn and get something from all these. In my case, I feel like they're wonderful people. I feel like I'm very blessed, and more so than anything, I hope you gotta, in the long run, feel the same way as I do about the guests that I have on, because this isn't about me. Me running for governor isn't even about me. It's about the people in the state of Missouri. We need better leadership. Do I think I can present that? Yes, because it's the people I surround myself with. In closing, I'm a common man with common sense, seeking common good grounds for the common good, with the common denominator, we the people. That's my campaign slogan. A little long, a little lengthy, but about says it all. We need a change. We need a change really bad. See you next year. Oh, no, we got one more week. That's right. Have a show coming on next week. Anson Bills. I believe he's from Austin or Houston, Uvalde. All I can tell you right now is this man is in the thick, thick, thick. He's right on basically the border. It doesn't get any more real than this. This month alone, December, you can thank the White House. I don't even want to use that idiot's name, but you can thank that White House for bringing in over 190,000 people in the month of December crossing the border. And just when you didn't think it could get any worse, yes, I'm going to do a Greg Gutfeld, because I love Greg Gutfeld. Greg Gutfeld couldn't do this on national TV. I hope it doesn't mar the group, the network at all. I don't believe it will, but I've got to do something just a little bit different for an outro. It's disgusting. That's all I'm going to say. But you got to see it to believe it. And if you don't think it's a possibility, I got to tell you, it's wrong. We are getting screwed. We are getting screwed so bad by this government in so many ways. So I'm going to put this on there because, again, you may not like the sin, but you can love the sinner. But this is what our country has gone to. And it's very, very, very sad. Maybe that's a good reason it's canceled. Couldn't do it. Can't do it. There we go. It can't be done. But seriously, folks, we had the Senate House was desecrated. People doing sexual activities right there. There is a man bent over, a man behind him, and there's still a third man taking a video of the exploitations of homosexuality at Amy Klobuchar's seat. And the saddest part about it is, I'd like to know who the director and producer are, but I think personally it was probably Hunter Biden, and they probably all had a little bit of blow. Just saying it. Got to have a little bit of humor here every now and then. Railroads in El Paso and Eagle Pass are closed. $2 million a day for being lost by railroad companies. Yeah, now you got to hit us with reality again. Chad, stop it. But seriously, we are being screwed by this country, this border being open. And actually, I did hear that earlier, Chad, about the railroad lines are even being interrupted here in Kansas, Missouri, going across up and down the middle part of our country. This is affecting us all. We've got young men screwing around in the house, videotaping themselves. We've got Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, corrupt as they come. The TikTok's latest video of what happens when they are not in session shows our government hard at work doing what they do best, railing to citizens. Yes, it's going to go down in the U.S. annals of history, what they've done. That's just my backdoor way of getting this through into the House. But it's deplorable. We've been screwed, and we're getting screwed every single day. I was talking to a woman today, and this will be my last thought for the day. I was talking to a woman today at the bank, and I said, there's so many people coming over across the border illegally. I remember I told you guys a story about a Laos man that was getting his naturalization papers, biting nails for 6-7 weeks till he got his paperwork, and we threw a big party. Baseball, hot dog, apple pie, and Chevrolet. One of the guys gave him a Chevy ball cap. The ladies made pies. We brought in food. I bought a softball. We all signed it, congratulating him. Anyway, to make a long story short, the Constitution was written over 200 years ago. And it's still breathing and living today. But the number one thing that came out of that Constitution was the ability to vote. We have that luxury. They don't have that luxury right now over in England. They don't have that luxury. The blue bloods, they're ordained by, it's a monarchy ordained by God, you know. They've got the best blood. I wouldn't want to be a British person if my life depended on it. I couldn't live under that. That's not fair. It's the leaders. It's the ones that hopefully are leading in the right direction. Folks, vote. Get involved. If you're doing nothing else this year, make that your resolution. You're going to get involved. Colorado, 3 judges, I believe. I think I've got this down. 3 judges. Trump cannot run for office. It's going to go in front of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's going to go, that ain't happening. He's going to be able to run. You can't do that. And if Trump were to be imprisoned right this moment, that man would still win the presidency, and we would be more than glad to have him, quote unquote, running the country from jail instead of the people that are jailbirds running the country in D.C. They should be in jail. Jake Sullivan, John Kirby, Austin, Mayorkas, Harris, Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell. The list goes on and on and on. There are laws. There are laws that there's going to cause a major backfire on the Dems. Yeah, right. I hope it does. I would like to think that it will. But there are laws, and we've got to get back to the basics of the Constitution. We can't let these people keep raping and pillaging and assaulting the American public, the tax-paying citizens, the legal Americans like you, like myself. Good night from the bottom of my heart, voraciously loving you all, liking what I'm doing, and I hope that you will come join us again real soon. In the meantime, I'm going to give you a promo to Cyber Warfare and then my new outro. See if you stick around for both. Thank you.